Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over all of the changes that occurred to factions as of the most recent patch of version 4.1. This is somewhat relevant as we have a faction event today, as well as just going over some teams that are still viable after those changes. But anyways, as far as those changes, there were mainly three things that ended up occurring. The first one is how transformations act within delves. This is relevant mainly for Dragon's Eye as well as for the mythic that's going to be coming out this Friday. But basically the way that transforms work now is whatever level the enemy is, it'll basically half their level. So if they are level 100, it'll make them into a level 50, and so on and so forth until they just become a very small level. This obviously makes things like Dragon's Eye a lot weaker than what it once was, but still pretty viable to use. Other than that, we now have 20 new battles to do within the delves themselves, so there's a bunch more variation within them. And the third and final one is the one that's relevant on these Tuesday events that occur every single week, as well as whenever a new faction comes out. But the whole scoring system has basically been overhauled. You no longer need to camp level 20, as you can see. Not a single person on leaderboard is at 20. This is mainly because the way that they revamped the point system. Basically, it now gives you more points the deeper you end up going. There are a few ways that you can end up doing this if you still want to do easier battles. One is to just camp level 50 if you're really early on in the game, and you'll eventually be able to reach the final stage the same way that you would kind of do at camping 20. You just need to go ever so slightly further. The next would be to camp around level 100 if you're going for leaderboard. Instead of just constantly moving forward, you can just simply camp at a somewhat easy level, like a lot of people seem to be doing at 110 at the moment, so you could also do that. But just camping a somewhat mid-range level and then getting points for the leaderboard that way, since you'll be able to get through all your sigils very quickly. Or if you really wanted to, just go all the way with them, as the deeper you go, the more points you will end up getting, though that does have a bit of a diminishing return, so around about 150 to maybe like 200 at the absolute furthest is how far you would go if you want to go make leaderboard and then just camp that area and stay there. But anyways, basically, they changed it so the strategy now is to go as deep as you possibly can. You can actually obtain every single reward. You need about 70,000 points or so to gain all the rewards, which is actually, even though that's more points, it's slightly easier than it was before, because you only need to reach around level 90, or exactly 90 in most situations, to be able to get the objective done, because you only need about 70,000. So as you can see, a good majority of these reached it, and you would definitely have it by the 100th battle. So yeah, a little bit easier, because if I'm not mistaken, it used to take around 110 or so to get it before. So now it's even easier. So other than that, it still plays out the exact same way in this particular faction. It's the first room, you double check the fifth room and see if it's a 1.3 or higher. If it is a 1.3, then you check to see if this is a 1.3, in which case you will go do that. And otherwise, you'll just go end up doing this battle, rush towards that area, then simply keep checking your 2 tier 3s and just keep doing it. Multiplier order as pretty much always as far as the rest of the faction. And one thing that's nice about Crypt is it does of course have 2 treasure rooms, or 1.5. This one is always a treasure room, and there's a few different new treasure rooms as you can see right there. And this one is normally a treasure room. I don't know the exact chance, but about half the time it ends up being one. Anyways, let's just play through one real quick with this, and then let's go into some teams. As you can see right here, I ended up switching back into one of the pretty generic teams that currently work in every single faction, except for the Sea of Sorrows, the most recent one that was added. But basically the whole premise of this team is we're using a double Megavore Weaver, and basically we'll be able to go use Mountain Pressure in the first slot here, go and get a bunch of our explosions off of that, and then simply just Weaver into a Megavore, or Megavore into a Weaver, depending on what level of delve you're currently in, and just kill everything out that way. And also, one really nice thing about Megavore is his instant kill chance is still just as high as it's always been, 8% chance to instant kill, and there's currently nothing within delves that has immunity to that. So just doing extra turn spam off of Megavores is still a pretty decent way, since Dragon's Eye won't be able to give the full effect anymore. But that's that. Anyways, let's get into some teams now. As far as various things that you can use for delves, of course, with the Dragon's Eye nerf, it's slightly less desirable. Slightly less desirable in that you would still use it pretty much always, because it's just insanely good. But you have to slightly change your teams compared to what you used to be able to do. So let's just go over some teams for all of that for every single current existing faction, all 4 of them, if the troop menu will want to load this year. That was supposedly fixed this patch, but wasn't actually. Anyways, First things first, the one I just showed. One thing to note about this though, which is relevant for every single one of these teams, is it does run with Titan. You do have to use Titan a very, very, very high amount when doing delves, as it is currently the best hero class in the game, and is used on almost every delve team in the entire game. One reason for this is in delves, you're actually allowed to use any color weapon. While the factions are restricted to 2 colors, your weapon can be absolutely any color you want. So you're always able to use Mountain Crusher, you're always able to use Dragon's Eye, and whatever other new meta weapon ever comes into the game, you'll always be able to use it. And then you basically just combine the best hero class in the game with the best weapon in the game, and then throw it into a team, and that's basically what delves is. But anyways, as far as this hero class, it gains 50% starting mana. You can also synergize it with some giants. What's pretty relevant about giants is all the trolls in the game are giants, so you generally have something that can double your mana. That's always going to be useful. As far as traits, you want to go for the stun, so that if they ever hit you with skulls, they'll have no traits. All 3 of these are pretty useless, so you just go for the extra attack. Next, you would end up going for either the brown extra armor if you just want a little bit more durability, or just a little bit extra magic for your yellows. And then you finally start getting into the better ones. You then go for a brown storm, so that you can then synergize that into gaining a barrier every single brown. This is the most important trait that he has, simply because this is what allows your hero to indefinitely tank forever. So yeah, you'll definitely want to have that, and the brown storm just makes it even easier for you to get those initial browns you need to make sure you don't die to the very high stats that you might end up meeting in the higher level delves. Other than that, you would generally go for the explosion every single time you take an extra turn, though very occasionally it can be worth going for either the brown mastery or the enrage every single time you extra turn, though more often than not the explosion is going to be your best bet. And then for the final one, you go for a bunch of immunities, the most relevant one being the stun, devour, and deathmark immunities. Stun making it so you can keep all these amazing traits, and the deathmark and devour immunities to make sure you don't instantly die to anything. And yeah, this hero class is basically just used with everything, while using either Dragon's Eye or Mountain Crusher. More often than not, still using Dragon's Eye, even though it's been nerfed. Anyways, that's that team. Already saw it. Next up, the Sea of Sorrows team, which is Dragon's Eye, Cockatrice, Apothecary, and Ubistet. If you don't have Ubistet, you can replace that with any number of things, like a Dragon Cruncher, any other Devour option, or anything that can clean up a single troop pretty well. And the whole premise of this team is relatively cheap. Dragon's Eye, which you get for free from completing out the from completing out the Dragon's Claw Kingdom, then getting the hero class of Dragon Guard, getting 250 wins on that hero class as you have it set, and then you'll end up getting this weapon automatically. And this weapon is the main weapon that you would currently be using in delves, even though they already just nerfed it this patch very heavily. It is still one of the most viable weapons to be using, and this team is pretty cheap since you just have the Cockatrice of the rare and the Apothecary of the ultra rare. And essentially what you just do is keep disabling with the Cockatrice to get a bunch of browns, even more browns off the Apothecary, and you just keep spamming Dragon's Eye forever until whatever your cleanup troop kills it, and whatever I end up using for that. As far as pure faction for the Sea of Sorrows, you're going to go with the Hammerclaw, Sea Witch, and the Double Deep King. The whole premise of this is basically to use the Deep King's extra attack that you keep gaining per extra turn, and you keep spamming your Sea Witch to either keep your troops alive, or if everything seems to be currently alive, you then throw it into your Hammerclaw. Hammerclaw is the tankiest thing from this faction, having a 50% skull mitigation, as well as an immune to entangle, both of which are very helpful. And other than that, you basically just use his ability occasionally, just keep tanking with him, keep throwing Sea Witch down, and basically just keep spamming Sea Witch over and over and over again. The Deep Kings you generally don't even need to cast, they're more often than not just a waste unless you're trying to clean up a troop with it, but more often than not you're just using them for their attack bonus, and just using the Hammerclaw Sea Witch combo until you win. And like many pure faction teams, you basically just run the faction banner with the team, as every single faction's banner does work pretty well with the pure faction team in almost every situation. Next up, All-Seeing Eye. You can run Forest Troll, which does gain half mana because it does count as a giant when using it with the Titan hero class. The Dragon's Eye again, Apothecary, pretty much any time when you can use Apothecary, you want to use Apothecary, simply because it will give you the browns you need for your Mountain Crusher or your Mang or your Dragon's Eye. That's one other thing, I didn't actually show it in any of these teams, but if you happen to not have Dragon's Eye yet, or really any other option, you might have Mang laying around. I believe it's 21 red and 21 brown masteries these days that you end up accumulating it at, of hero mastery, but nonetheless, it's a really easy to obtain weapon, and it ends up stealing all of, well, I could just show it real quick. Most of you probably know what Mang is by now though, but Man, it destroys an enemy's armor, deals some damage to them, but the most relevant part is based on every single armor you destroy, you'll end up accumulating 1 additional attack. So if they have 100 armor, that is 100 attack. So not only are you reducing down their durability, but you are increasing your attack by an absurd number. And you can also kill out that way if you really had to. It's not as safe as some other methods because it requires skulls and stuff, but still a method to consider. But anyways, as far as this team, you have the Forest Troll, so you can go get the Entangle. It also has a 33% skull mitigation. This particular team runs 2 Entangles. You can also run Sylvania Mora there if you don't have Yasmin chosen or something. But basically, you want to have a lot of Entangle. The first slot within both of the first and final battle in All Seeing Eye is a troop that steals your attack, as well as has skull spam on the team. So you want to make sure they are always entangled so that you don't have to deal with either of those 2 mechanics. And other than that, the rest is just pretty standard, Dragon's Eye and mana accumulation for the rest, and just some entangles thrown in. As far as the Pure faction, oddly enough, the Pure faction for All Seeing Eye is the strongest Pure team as far as Pure teams are concerned, like if you were to go and bother using it outside of the faction itself. But yeah, a Clarion Leech, a Clarion, Watchmother, and then their X-Raider. And this is actually the exact same order that it is on the final battle. It's, yeah, just the most optimal Pure team there is, really. It's not the best as far as actually getting it done, just because you're up against literally the exact same thing, and obviously that can not go over too well during the very higher levels. But it's a pretty solid team. It has basically everything you need. It has a summoner too, which works out pretty nicely. It has a heal, has a attack steal, has some board clear, has a decent mana start, has board control even, and has skull spam. So it has a little bit of mix of everything, really. And it's interesting how it pans out most of the time. But yeah, there really isn't any other variant that you can really do other than maybe going double a Clarion Leech instead of just a Clarion there. But that's about the only real replacement you can end up making. Also, this is annoying me that only a manga is showing. There we go. Anyways, Hall of Guardians with the Eye team. There's a couple different ways you can do this. So one of them these days is the Gorgolfa Divinia combo. And then again, throwing in the Yasmin. Yasmin's needed in this particular faction, not so much to make sure you mitigate the skulls, though that is also the reason, though generally you're always running Tangle for that reason, just to make sure the higher delves don't really hit you too hard. But the main reason for this is there is a gargoyle within this battle, or within both the first and final battle, and it is probably the most annoying delve troop to have to deal with within delves as far as a first or final battle is concerned, mainly because it gets an insanely good boost ratio off of all the attack on the team, and obviously at higher level delves they have an absurd amount of attack, and he's generally going to double if not triple kill whatever he touches at that point. So you want to have as many entangles as possible with whatever entangle option you want to make sure you have a way to neutralize those, and ideally your entangle option can also do damage so that you can clean up whatever you're doing with Dragon's Eye, and Gorgolfa and Divinia combination is mainly just to make sure you have all the mana you need, as well as the tank since Gorgolfa has 75% skull reduction. He's also in the drop table this week. Anyways, as far as running Pure faction, you can run either double Silent Sentinel or double Gargoyle, or Silent Sentinel with triple Gargoyle. And this is also one of the few factions that actually does not bother using its faction banner in order to do the team. But as I said, Gargoyle is amazing, and yeah, you can just keep spamming him. He's basically the best troop you can actually obtain from any faction currently as well, other than maybe Silent Sentinel, which is actually pretty good too. So it's kind of funny that they are both in the same team together. But still, it's actually the hardest faction in the entire game to try to do Pure faction on, simply because the AI has way bigger advantage due to how Gargoyle scales upwards. So a little bit annoying, but if you're going to use something, that is what you use. As far as the Crypt, using Eye for Crypt, you would generally just use Rock Troll, Dragon's Eye with anything. I figured I'd throw the new guy that just came in this week, because he gets to transform all green to brown. This is not just relevant because you need brown, but it's also relevant because within the Crypt, there is a troop that has empowered in both the first and final battle that will transform all green to purple. And ideally, you'd want to convert green to brown before it converts green to purple, so that you basically negate out its conversion. So that's the whole point of using this guy, essentially. Well, that and to give brown, obviously. And you just do that. That'll end up giving you the mana you need for Eye. You start spamming Eye. And if nothing else, you can just keep spamming all your extra turns and get Megavore instant kills. You don't need Megavore here, though, of course, whatever pick-off troop you want to use there would be adequate. That fits within the coloration. And as far as Pure faction within the Crypt, it's pretty straightforward of just using 4 Lady Maranas. You really don't need to do anything else other than that. Main reason being is that it has instant kill on its capability, or on its ability itself, and that can get pretty high, up to about 30% or so on average, more often than not, assuming there's 10 purple or more. But yeah, you could easily just go do this, start getting every single instant kill down, and just win out all the battles you really need with it. You're eventually going to win even at level 500, which is pure luck. It's actually the easiest pure faction to do in the entire game currently. So if you're trying to get the achievement for obtaining a pure faction done at 2,500 rating, which I still haven't even done yet, the easiest way to do that would be run for Lady Mirana's at Crypt at level 500 and just hope you eventually get through. It will take many attempts, but if you level up the faction some and just throw enough attempts at it, you will eventually break through out of pure luck. So it'll happen eventually. But out of any faction, oddly enough, that is the easiest. I don't know if they're eventually going to be adding a 5th delve troop to every single delve. They said that or to every single faction, I mean. They said that they might consider it, but hopefully they will, because most pure factions are near impossible without it. But anyways, guys, that's everything that I wanted to go over. If you still have any other questions about factions or anything, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone!